Hey guys, good evening. Today we're going to be talking with pharmacist Ben Fuchs about skincare, all about skincare. And I consider pharmacist Ben to be our expert on skin. Whenever I have a question about skin, I go to him. Ben Fuchs has also been a mentor of mine for a long time, about 6 years. We first met. He was always one of the best communicators of the message. Now, skin can be really, really complicated. He's going to have a lot to say on it. And I'm going to start this off because there's a lot of people that ask what to do, if they still have bad skin and they've been on the products and they've been avoiding the bad foods. Now, you have to understand that for most people, just getting off the bad foods is going to be enough to start to clear up the skin. And just taking the 90 essential nutrients is usually enough to start to have healthy blood sugar. But it can get more complicated. And I know Ben's going to talk about this and he's going to do most of the talking, but it's definitely mostly blood sugar is going to be the biggest problem after already avoiding the bad foods and taking the 90 essential nutrients. I'm going to let Ben in now and we'll kick it off. Good evening, Ben.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for wanting me to. It's an honor.
Well, we get a lot of questions about skin, Ben, and honestly, I don't have that much to say on it. Our answer is usually pretty straightforward. Get off the bad foods, get on the 90 essential nutrients, and then maybe there's still a problem with blood sugar after that. Probably has to do with dehydration or something like that, but I really kind of want to hand it over to you because your knowledge of skin is so much greater than mine. And before you speak, I want to plug your products, by the way. Ben is a professional skincare product formulator. We often say that you might not need products just to achieve regular old skin, but that doesn't mean beautiful, radiant skin necessarily. It doesn't mean skin healing, like serious scars or acne scars or burns and stuff like that. So there's a lot of reasons why we might need skin products. And from what I gather, Ben has to be one of the best in the world. There's no other names that come to mind in terms of product formulation. And your products have absolutely raving reviews like I've never seen before in any other category of health. Even though we help people transform their health, they don't forcefully give you their positive testimonials like, no, those products, that's the kind of stuff that you hear about that. So Ben, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of just take it away. Tell us anything you want to about skin, maybe go into the 7 types of acne, maybe go into specific things that people might want to consider if they're still having a problem with their skin and they've already been off the bad foods and they've already taken the 90 essential nutrients at the basic level dose.
Well, you should give yourself a little more credit because you understand, just by what you just said, you understand more about the skin than a lot of skincare professionals because you understand that it's from the inside out. It's not from the outside in. And while you're right, you can do lots of really good things from the outside in. Beautiful skin starts within, from the inside out. The skin, as you know, you probably heard this a million times, the skin is the body's largest
organ.
Exactly. We always say that. You walk down the street and you ask people, you say, the skin is the body's largest. 99 people out of 100 will go, the skin is the body's largest organ. And we all give lip service to the skin as an organ. But when it comes to treating the skin, we rarely treat it like an organ. We think, oh, it's a canvas on the outside of our body and we can just paint the skin issues away. By the time you see a skin problem, by the time you see a zit, by the time you see the rash, by the time you see the dark spot, it's over. That's the end result. That's the way the body has resolved a biochemical breakdown that starts within. So to try to treat a pimple, if you have acne, for example, with benzoyl peroxide or with the standard skincare product, is kind of like going to an intestinal doctor, a GI doctor, and tell him, oh, my stomach hurts. He says, here's a magic cream. Go put it on the turd in the toilet bowl, and it'll cure it'll fix your stomach problem. It'll fix your intestinal problem. In other words, the pimple is the excretion. The rash is the end result of a sequence of biochemical breakdowns that finally shows up as a rash where you see it. You can't treat a rash by treating the rash. You have to treat the beginnings. You have to treat the biochemical cause, the biochemical root of the problem that's led to the rash. And the good news is it's not that complicated. You've heard me say this a million times, right? All disease is cell disease, right? But all cell disease begins with dirty blood. This is the beginnings of all health degenerative health challenges. I'm not talking about necessarily, accidents or trauma, but the kind of breakdowns that occur in the body that just get worse over time, that never improve. That's what we call degenerative diseases or degenerative illnesses. Those all begin in the bloodstream. And this is easy. This simplifies health, all health. As goes the skin, so goes the health of the body. And if you have a skin problem, you have a body problem. So all disease is cell disease. All cell disease begins with dirty blood. That includes every skin issue you can name. So what does that mean? Well, if you want to fix your skin, fix your blood. How do you fix your blood? We got to figure out what's going wrong with the blood in the first place. What goes wrong with the blood is it gets contaminated from either injections through the skin or food. The only two places the blood becomes contaminated. Now, if you're injecting things through your skin, you could easily end up with skin problems. You could end up with acne, people who inject steroids or who use methamphetamine. They're notorious for having skin problems. Injecting things.
And this is just from the blood reacting to foreign stuff going into it.
Not quite, but yes, that's the beginnings of it. I'll explain how it all happens. The point is that when you breach the skin, you breach the barrier into the blood, either through through IV, through injections through the skin, or through leaky gut. Things enter into the bloodstream that shouldn't. Once things enter into the bloodstream that shouldn't be in there, an immune reaction occurs. A defensive reaction occurs in the blood. The blood, white blood cells and immune cells start to react with that toxin, whether the toxin is, say, gluten that's gotten in through a leaky gut or something that you've injected into your skin. An immune reaction is initiated in the blood. You could think of an immune reaction by its appearance, which is inflammation. Your blood becomes inflamed.
So they're like grouping activity around this foreign particle.
Complexes. They actually call them circulating immune complexes, or CICs. And these CICs, or circulating immune complexes, represent the body's response, defensive response to toxins that got into the blood. Now, so how does this end up with the skin? Well, one of the ways the body cleans the blood is by dumping things out into the tissues. When I was a kid and my mom would tell me to clean up my room, I had a really cool way of cleaning my room. In about I had to have the messiest room when I was a kid, and in about 5 minutes I could have it completely clean. She'd look in there and go, "Oh my God, what'd you do?" What did I do? I shoved everything under the bed, right? And the room was incredibly clean. Well, the body does that too. The body shoves everything into the soft tissues and into the connective tissues. The blood does. And this is one of the ways the body keeps the blood clean. The circulating immune complexes get dumped into various tissues. When these circulating immune complexes get dumped into your joints, that's called arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. When it gets dumped into the connective tissue, that's called scleroderma. When it gets dumped into the thyroid, that's called Hashimoto's thyroid. In other words, autoimmune diseases begin when these circulating immune complexes get dumped into tissues. As far as the skin goes, the skin is a wonderful place for the blood and the body to clean out the blood, and particles get stored in the tissue, in the skin. These particles in the skin disturb the chemistry of skin cells, and this is where skin reactions can occur. Things like eczema and psoriasis, things like rosacea. Even acne can be the end result of these deposits in the skin causing an inflammatory response. This is where it becomes very interesting and also very tricky. See, we look at the skin, and it doesn't look like there's much happening, right? But in reality, it's a beehive of activity. The skin is stratified, meaning it's layered, like baklava or like lasagna. And the surface of the skin, this top surface, is kind of like the wax on a leaf. Do you ever look at a leaf really closely and it has a waxy layer on the surface? That waxy layer keeps the leaf hydrated. It keeps the water evaporating. The skin has the same thing. It has a waxy layer on the surface. That waxy layer is very similar to your fingernail. Underneath that waxy layer, you have various layers of cells that have different shapes. Those cells are born in the bottom of the skin, and they rise up to the top through the layer. That rising up, it's called differentiation because all the cells are taking on different shapes, is a very complex process. And a lot of things have to go right for the cells to differentiate appropriately so that they can make it to the top intact and form this barrier. Does that make sense? Cells are rising to the top and they're forming a barrier, and that's a very, very complicated process. If you have,
Are these the same cells that are starting at the bottom and moving their way up?
yes, cells are, they're called keratinocytes, skin cells. And they start their life at the bottom, what's called the basal layer. The next layer is called the squamous layer. And the basal layer and the squamous layer are the only place in the skin, in the surface of the skin, where you have living cells. After the squamous layer, you have no more living cells. The cells are they're dead, and they become progressively flatter and harder as they rise to the top. You follow me? They're rising up to the top. And this is a very complicated process. And we don't think of this as a complicated process. And this is why we don't understand how we can have eczema.
Well, your body does this on its own without our thought, right?
But it's a beautiful process, because not only are these cells rising to the top to form a barrier, but as they're rising to the top, they're dumping their contents overboard. Check this out. You have a fat, juicy cell at the bottom, the basal layer. It goes up to the squamous layer. It's less fat and juicy at the squamous layer. And by the way, the only two places you have skin cancer are the basal cell carcinoma and the squamous cell carcinoma. After the squamous layer, you never have skin cancer because the cells are dead. You can't get cancer with a dead cell. You can only get it at the two bottom layers. So as the cells are rising...
Is acne poking through these layers into the dead layers?
I'll tell you how acne happens in a second, because that's also very interesting. So, but this is the general concept of how all skin diseases begin. All the different diseases have little tiny tweaks that make them special, but the general process in healthy skin is cells are rising from the bottom to the top, taking a different shape. So the process is called differentiation. They're alive only in the two lower layers, and as they rise up to the top, not only are they dying, but they're becoming flatter and more dead. They start their life round and plump and juicy at the bottom, and they rise up and become progressively flatter and deader as they're flatter and harder, I should say. They're dead, but they're flatter and harder. And as they're rising to the top, this is so cool. Check this out, Ryan. They're dumping their contents overboard, and those contents become moisture factors. This is how the skin stays moist. Differentiation proceeds. The content, isn't this cool? The contents get dumped overboard.
It's mind-blowing, actually.
It's mind-blowing, right? And we don't even talk about this. And as they dump the contents overboard, those contents become sponges that trap moisture. Nobody should ever have dry skin. If you have dry skin, it's because this stuff is not, the differentiation process is not proceeding as it should, and the cells aren't as healthy as they should, so they're not dumping the appropriate contents overboard. So as they're rising to the top, they go from being round, plump, and juicy at the bottom to flat and dead at the top. Just like people. We start our life round and plump and juicy. We end our lives flat and dead. This is what a cell does. And as it's rising to the top, it's dumping its contents overboard. The key point to take home is this process is very complex and requires many, many regulatory factors. And lots of things have to go right for this process to occur appropriately. And if you're missing nutrients, I'll tell you what those nutrients are, key nutrients, or if toxicity is being stashed away in the skin from the blood, this process will not ensue appropriately, and the surface of the skin will not get developed appropriately, or cells will grow too fast and you'll end up with plaques on the surface. In the case of acne, acne is the result of that same process not occurring in the skin the way I just described it, but occurring within a follicle. In your skin, you have rabbit holes. If you look on the surface of the skin with the microscope, you'll see holes, right? Those holes are like like the openings to a rabbit hole, and they go down into a tube, an invagination they call it. It's like a little tube, and that tube is like the hole where a rabbit would live. So you think of a rabbit hole. The tube is called a follicle. The opening is called a pore, right? Are you with me so far?
I am with you.
Okay.
To tell you the truth, a lot of these words, we hear them all the time,
yeah.
And this is making it all make sense for me, and I hope for others too.
Okay, so you got the pore on the top, excuse me. You got the pore on the top, you got the follicle on the, that's the hole. It's where the rabbit would live, and the pore is the opening, right? So you can picture this. The follicle has a hair, not all of them, but a lot of them have a little hair coming out, and the follicle has a little oil pump inside of it. That oil pump is made up of cells. Those cells are called sebocytes, and the oil pump is a gland. That's what a gland is. It's a pump. It has liquid and it pumps out. The gland is called a sebaceous gland, and the oil is called sebum. So this rabbit hole has a little oil pump, a sebaceous gland. It's pumping oils out, lubricating oils. The role of the oils is to keep everything lubricated, and it has a little hair coming out. Not all of them, but a lot of them have a little hair.
So the follicle is going to be doing this whether there's a hair in it or not.
Not all follicles have hairs, but a lot of them do. Not all follicles have sebaceous glands, but a lot of them do. So a follicle has a pump. We'll take one that has a pump in it because this is how acne begins. So these follicles have a pump, right? Now here's the key point. The follicle, that is the rabbit hole, is lined with cells, like everything else. It's lined with cells. And like everything else, like I just described in the skin, the cells are dividing. They're differentiating. Not dividing, but differentiating. They're growing to the top. They're doing that whole process I just talked about, right? If you have inflammatory factors, if you have nutritional deficiencies, the cells of that follicle will grow out of control. Instead of dividing in a healthy way, they'll grow out of control. When they grow out of control in a follicle, we call that a clogged pore. This is what a clogged pore is. And people who think, oh, I put that product on my skin and it clogged my pores. Baloney. They don't understand how the skin works. If you've ever said, oh, I put that product on and it clogged my pores, you don't understand how pores get clogged. They don't get clogged from the outside in. They get clogged from the inside out. You understand what I'm saying? Now, it's
not just dust and stuff.
It's not stuff on the outside that's clogging the pores. Otherwise, every time you wore foundation, a woman wore foundation, you clog every pore in your face. That doesn't happen. It's silly to even think that, but we have these silly thoughts because we don't understand the skin. Everything I just told you, that makes sense, but when did you ever hear this before? Nobody ever talks about this stuff. Even people spend all kinds of money on skincare products, and we don't even understand how this thing proceeds. So anyway, so now you have a clogged pore if the skin cells are dividing out of control. Remember, skin cells are growing. This differentiation process is very complicated. And not only does it require lots of chemistry to go right in order for the cells to divide appropriately at the right pace, but if those signaling factors and regulatory factors are not there, one of the things that happens is skin cells will grow out of control. In fact, the default state of a cell is to grow. It takes energy for it not to grow. You understand what I'm saying? Its default state is to grow. It takes regulation and regulatory factors for it not to grow. Under deficiency states, it'll grow out of control. So under deficiency states or in the presence of inflammatory factors, these cells divide out of control. We call that a clogged pore. Now, if there's oil also being pumped out of control, and sugar will do it, and stress hormones will do it, causing the sebocytes to pump a lot of oil out of control. Two major reasons why that happens is cortisol and insulin and sugar. This is where diet plays a major role, and psychological issues and stress issues play a major role. Oil will also get pumped out at a very high, at a rapid clip. So now you have a clogged pore, and you'll have lots of oil. Now,
where's it going to go?
It gets trapped. Exactly. Now, to make matters worse, you have lots of bacteria on your skin. Normally, you have a microbiome in your intestine. You got a microbiome on your skin. If you could see the bacteria on normal, healthy skin, that is important, bacterial species that are important for health, good health. So you have a normal, healthy microbiome on the skin. If you get a clogged pore, and you have oil, the pore can trap bacteria, or the clog can trap bacteria. Many of these bacteria thrive under conditions of no oxygen. They're what are called anaerobic bacteria, especially a bacteria called P. acnes. propionic acnes. I forgot the P stands for. P acnes. It secretes an acid called propionic acid, this bacteria, so they call it P acnes. In any case, P acnes is an anaerobic bacteria. It doesn't like oxygen. So it thrives under conditions of zero oxygen, which is perfect because now you've got a clogged pore with no oxygen. And you've trapped the bacteria, and the sebum is a perfect meal for bacteria. It's got everything a bacteria needs. So now you've got this P. acnes bacteria trapped into in this clogged pore with basically in a dark place where it can thrive and an all-you-can-eat buffet. So the combination of all of this is where you get a pimple. This is the classic formation of a pimple. You see all these factors. You've got the hyperactivity, hyperproliferation of the skin cells growing out of control. You've got the hypersecretion of the sebum being trapped in the follicle, and you've got the bacteria that thrive in an anaerobic state where there's no oxygen that now have an all-you-can-eat buffet. That they can munch off munch out on the sebaceous secretions. Then the bacteria start to proliferate, and you get a big pimple. That's what a pimple is. That's your standard, what we call in the business, comedone. Now, the key point to take home is there's three factors involved. There's the hyperproliferation factor, there's the hypersecretion factor, and there's the bacteria. The bacteria are the end. The bacteria is the end. That happens. That's
a lot of skincare products are kind of trying to kill that bacteria.
Killing the bacteria is the last of it. The most important thing is to stabilize the skin cells, the hyperproliferating skin cells, and to calm the sebaceous gland down.
So everything we say about nutrition, just to focus in here, this is what stops cells from overproducing.
It regulates. It stops it from overproducing, and it stimulates it from underproducing.
So with a lack of nutrients, we lack
it goes both ways.
The communication to the cells to regulate.
Regulation. It's all homeostasis. The body is constantly pulling the downs up and pulling the ups down. So it's always doing this little dance here. Under conditions of nutritional deficiency, you can go where you're not going to make enough stuff, or you can make too much stuff. Neither one is a good situation. Cancer is a classic example of the body growing out of control under conditions of duress. The bottom line, the take-home point is there's two factors that are involved, always, with all disease, but especially with skin. The bad things are getting in, and the good things aren't. And it's as simple as that. And we overthink medicine, and we overthink health, and we overthink healing. I haven't gone to the medical library in a long time because now everything's on Google and I can do research at home. But I used to go to the medical library, and I'd be so amazed by 5 floors packed with textbooks, and we understood all the molecular reactions and all the genetics and all the enzymes and everything that was happening in the body, but we were so sick. And doctors couldn't do anything about disease because we overthink and we make things so complicated. It's very simple. Keep the bad stuff out and put the good stuff in. And when I say bad stuff, I'm not just talking about bad food. I'm talking about bad thoughts. And I'm talking about bad feelings. And I'm talking about spiritual disconnection. And
can you go a bit more into that? How can our mentality affect what's going on in our body?
Absolutely. One of the main initiators of, let's take acne as our example, one of the main initiating factors of a comedone means a pimple, one of the major initiating factors of the comedone is sebaceous secretions, sebum. Sebum is skin oil. The sebaceous gland is the gland that makes the oil. The sebaceous gland is triggered by inflammation, by stress hormone, by insulin, and by sugar. So, well, you want to talk about the psychological aspects, so forget sugar, just cortisol. So under conditions of high cortisol secretion, you're going to make a lot of skin oils. Under conditions of high cortisol secretion, you're not going to be able to respond to bacteria as effectively. Cortisol is an immune suppressant. So you're going to be more susceptible to immune attack or to attacks by microbial attacks under conditions of cortisol secretion. So when your cortisol is high, you're going to be more likely to be attacked or to not be able to defend yourself from microbes, and you're going to be pumping out more skin oils. So relaxing the body is very important. Sugar is also involved with cortisol secretion because when you're eating a lot of sugar, your insulin goes up. When your insulin goes up, your blood sugar drops. When your blood sugar drops, your cortisol goes up. You don't want me to say that again? When you eat a lot of sugar, insulin goes up. Insulin pulls the sugar out of the blood. You get hypoglycemic. Under conditions of low blood sugar, under conditions of hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, cortisol comes to the rescue to give you emergency energy. And to make matters worse, the more cortisol,
Interesting.
yes, the more cortisol you're secreting, the more your liver is going to produce sugar. So you get this vicious spiral.
Ooh.
Exactly. So, but you know,
well, when you're producing cortisol, it's your body's not concerned about regenerating skin cells and such right at that moment. You're fight and flight.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And it initiates all of the defensive response, those defensive responses. Sebum is a defensive response. Why would sebum be a defensive part of the defensive response chemistry? Well, if a lion is chasing you, it's better. You're going to be better off if you have a light layer of oil on your skin. It'll be harder for the lion to grab you. So sebum and oil production are part of the defensive response chemistry. Another part of the defensive response chemistry is pigmentation. So hyperpigmentation, dark spots. A lot of people complain about dark spots, especially dark spots that happen after inflammation. It's called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, or PIH. That's also tied into cortisol and stress hormone. So under conditions of excess cortisol, you're going to make a lot of sugar. You're going to be pumping a lot of sebum. You're going to be hypoglycemic. And by the way, acne used to be called skin diabetes. When I was in pharmacy school, they used to use diabetes medicine to treat acne.
Really?
Because of this mechanism that I just told you about. So under conditions of excess sugar intake, your skin's chemistry is going to be thrown off. You're going to be more likely to make lots of oils. You're going to get dark spots, and your skin cells aren't going to be able to divide as effectively. And by the way, skin cells make cortisol. So cortisol is actually made by skin cells. So if you're under a lot of duress, psychological duress, your skin cells themselves are going to be making cortisol and making inflammatory hormone, increasing pro-inflammatory chemistry. So all of this is to say the good stuff has to come in, and that is nutrients. I'll tell you what those are here in a minute. And the bad stuff has to stay out. Now, here, and by the way, I know somebody said something about somebody's talking about dairy. Dairy is very pro-inflammatory. And pro-inflammatory foods, and dairy is also, a lot of dairy is given, dairy cows are high in, they're actually given insulin sometimes. Insulin is a growth factor, essentially. So there's a substance called IGF, you may have heard of that, something called insulin-like growth factors. And dairy contains high amounts of this IGF substance that can make matters worse. Insulin speeds things up. So the more sugar you're eating, the more insulin you're making, the faster everything's going to move. That's one of insulin's jobs, is to move things around really fast, to make things grow. Insulin is a growth substance. So dairy is extremely inflammatory for a lot of people. Even if you don't have dairy allergies, it could be very inflammatory. So anybody who's dealing with acne, that's one of the first things you want to get rid of is dairy. So anyway, let's talk about some of the nutrients that are important for this growth process, for this differentiation process. The most important is vitamin A. By far, it is the key nutrient for dealing with acne. Why? Because vitamin A is a regulatory vitamin. It's actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. And it controls differentiation. Under conditions of vitamin A deficiency, differentiation goes crazy. Skin cells start to divide very rapidly under conditions of deficiency. In fact, vitamin A is actually used to treat lung cancer. Lung cancer cancer in general is a classic differentiation issue. And vitamin A is retin A, the same retin A you use on your skin, is actually chemotherapy for treating cancer. It stabilizes the growth of cells. Psoriasis is another example. There's a lot of similarities, by the way, between psoriasis and cancer. Psoriasis is skin cells that are growing out of control. And vitamin A deficiencies and vitamin A are associated with psoriasis, and vitamin A is a treatment for psoriasis, just like it's a treatment for acne. So anybody who's dealing with acne, first of all, everybody should be using vitamin A, but especially if you're dealing with acne, in fact,
it's essential.
Yes, right, everybody should be using it. But vitamin A is so important for the skin, for acne, for controlling the growth of cells, that to this day, it's the major dermatological treatment for dealing with acne in the form of retin A, or now they have fake vitamin A creams. I don't know if you know this, things like adapalene and differin. These are synthetic versions of vitamin A. Accutane is a synthetic version of vitamin A. It's a fake version of vitamin A. Vitamin A chemistry is a target, a pharmacological target for dealing with acne. But you don't need to go the pharmacological route. Just get yourself on 20,000 or 25,000 international units of vitamin A day and use vitamin A cream, like retinol cream or retinol gel. I make a retinol gel at Truth. If vitamin A is the key, the take-home, the most important vitamin for the skin for dealing with acne, zinc is the most important mineral for dealing with acne.
We mention it every day. It comes up.
It is a rock star. It's a rock and it's a rock star. It's a mineral. It's hard to say it's hard to really explain the incredibly vital nature of zinc for so many different systems in the body, but especially for the skin. There are large amounts, maybe 10 or 15% of the zinc in your body is stored in your skin.
Wow.
It's literally a repository for zinc. When you cut yourself or you burn yourself, zinc, which is very important for DNA and for reproduction, for cellular reproduction, zinc is mobilized and directed to the cut or to the burn to help accelerate healing. Somebody's asking about porokeratosis. Keratosis means you're producing a lot of skin cells, a lot of keratin, which is the protein that comes out of skin cells. So any kind of keratoses, chicken skin. You ever hear chicken skin? You know what I'm talking about? There's a condition called chicken skin. It's called.
Oh, as a condition? No, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's called.
There's little bumps.
It's called. I forgot the name. I forgot what they call it, but it's a type of keratosis, and you form these hard bumps on the surface of the skin. Chicken skin is when you have this kind of hard, rough surface to the skin. Hyperkeratosis folliculitis is what they call it. Any of these kinds of conditions that are caused by hyperproliferation of skin cells can result in lots of hard proteins on the surface of the skin. These are all very similar to acne. The mechanism of acne is very similar to a lot of other skin diseases, and it's caused by the same things. Skin cells growing too fast because of inflammatory factors that are disturbing differentiation, and a deficiency in regulatory nutrients. Vitamin A is the major regulatory nutrient. Vitamin D is also a regulatory nutrient. So that's also important.
These are all fat soluble, zinc and
the skin is the quintessential fatty organ in the body. And fatty nutrients are incredibly valuable for the skin. Now, as far as zinc goes, zinc is not only important for the genetics for helping skin cells grow, but zinc is also important for the immune system, and it's also important for the production of male hormone, testosterone. It's involved in testosterone secretion and also in the metabolism of testosterone. And testosterone is very similar to insulin in terms of its biochemistry. Just like insulin revs things up, testosterone revs things up. Just like insulin is associated with elevated increases in sebum secretion, testosterone is associated with elevated or increased sebum secretion. Zinc helps stabilize testosterone. So in addition to being an important anti-inflammatory and supporting immunity, in addition to being part of the skin's genetic, the way skin cells grow, the genetics of the growth of a skin cell, it's also important for testosterone. And testosterone also is produced by skin cells. So not only is cortisol, all the steroid hormones are produced by skin cells.
Really?
The skin cell produces steroid hormones. So all of the things that are associated with testosterone, when we talk about testosterone in the skin and we talk about cortisol in the skin, we're not just talking about cortisol that's made in the adrenal glands that goes in the blood. We're talking about local production of testosterone, local production of cortisol in the skin itself.
That's so cool.
Isn't it cool? So the zinc can help stabilize the processing of testosterone. Zinc is important for the immune system, and zinc also is important for healing. So between vitamin A and zinc, you have your two most important nutrients for dealing with acne. And just those two nutrients alone can help many people at least reduce their acne breakouts, if not completely address them, especially if they're deficient in vitamin A and zinc. And many people, if you're not supplementing, it's very likely you're going to be deficient in vitamin A.
Well, even if they're taking our products, the 90 Essential Nutrients, the Healthy Body Start Pack, it doesn't have enough zinc in it. Zinc is one of those ones that you can boost on its own. And a lot of people are asking how much should they take. When you look into the book, Let's Play Doctor, it might say 50 milligrams TID 3 times a day. Well,
no, you don't want to take too much zinc. So 50 milligrams a day is good, but you want the right form of zinc. A lot of people get the cheap form of zinc. You get a Walgreens zinc sulfate or zinc gluconate, they'll get an upset stomach. That's because that kind of zinc is not well handled by the body. You want zinc picolinate, and you want 50 milligrams a day. There's a few other good forms of zinc, zinc glycinate, zinc monomethionine, but
there's a lot of
zinc picolinate is really inexpensive, and it's just as effective as any other form of zinc, and you want 50 milligrams a day.
And that's total? Like, we don't have to take into account how much is zinc and how much is picolinate? It's just total value, 50 milligrams
That's very
zinc
good
picolinate?
point. No, 50 milligrams of zinc.
Okay, so how much zinc picolinate would that be?
They measure it by elemental zinc.
Okay.
When you see 50 milligrams of zinc picolinate, that's the zinc content.
Okay.
It's not, you're right, it's a good point.
It's not always like that in nutrition.
It's not always
right?
like that. It's not always like that. But in zinc picolinate,
Like if you see calcium, it'll say 1,000 milligrams, and
it'll
it's
tell
like
you
there's
how
like
much
only a little bit of calcium in it.
You gotta see, it'll say it contains so much elemental calcium.
Okay.
Right? So, and zinc picolinate is, when it says 50 milligrams, that contains 50 milligrams of elemental zinc, of zinc itself. Okay? And by the way, we call these things minerals. They're not minerals. They're elements. Minerals are very complex rocks. This is very confusing. You know, in the world of nutrition, the most confusing chapter in the Handbook of Nutrition is the chapter on minerals. And it starts from the very beginning because minerals aren't minerals. When we talk about minerals, the body doesn't have any minerals except in the teeth and in the bones. The body has elements and salts. It doesn't have rocks. A mineral is a very complex rock. If you were to dig minerals out of your garden and eat them, you wouldn't be very healthy. And if you put minerals from your garden in a glass of water, they sink to the bottom. They don't interact with the water at all. They have to be in an elemental form in order for the body to be able to use them. This is why plant-derived minerals are so amazing. Plants have an ability to turn rocks into elements, into single elements, into atomic matter. Nobody knows how this is done either. It's the magic.
Can I clarify this for some of the people? So when we're talking about minerals, we're talking mostly about rocks, and we're talking mostly about like clusters of these compounds. But when it becomes plant derived,
minerals are very, very complex substances. They're made up of aluminum and silica and oxygen and magnesium. And if you see the formula for a mineral, it's got like Mg2Si3O1 or O2. It's a very long, complex substance made up of a bunch of elements stuck together. What the body uses are these.
The individual elements.
The individual elements, correct. And the only
individually available.
Yes. The only way to turn a rock that's very complex into these is with a plant. Only plants and bacteria can do this. We can't do it in a factory. We don't know how this is done. This is an amazing thing.
Yeah, we don't have any chemical process.
No, there's no chemical process for doing this. That's why you have to eat your vegetables or eat plant-derived minerals. You know, what we call plant-derived minerals are really elements that have been surrounded with various materials by the plant to create what's called a colloidal structure. And these colloidal structures are elements surrounded by various proteins and other things that the plant that have been complexed by the plant within the plant itself. And that's what colloidal minerals are. Plant-derived colloidal minerals are. And they're found in the soil as well, because when the plant dies, it deposits them in the soil. And they're also
doesn't turn back into a rock, right?
Right, it doesn't turn back into rock. It just stays in the soil, and the next plant enjoys it. You know, it's just recycled. They're also made by special bacteria that live on the surface of the bottom of the soil, right, where the rock meets the soil. You know, Earth is a big rock, and then there's soil on top of this big rock. Well, right where the rock meets the soil, there are bacteria called lithotropes. Lithotropes means stone eaters. Litho means stone, trope means eaters. These stone
I didn't know that.
These lithotropes eat the rock, eat the earth, and secrete out electrolytes. They somehow turn the rock, which does not interact with water, into electrolytes, actually polyelectrolytes, long strings of electrolytes that can now interact with water. And in this interaction between the water and the polyelectrolytes, electrical energy is generated. And so you go from having an inert rock that does nothing, that just sits there like a rock, into these super active polyelectrolytes that can now interact with water, create electrical charges that can magnetically pull in amino acids and fatty acids and various other nutrients. And you get these complexes that are called humic complexes. You may have heard that term, humic acids, that contain these polyelectrolytes, which are called fulvic acids in the center. And these complexes are how plants get fed, these humic complexes. And the soil, good soil, is rich in these polyelectrolytes and these magnetically attracted amino acids and other nutrients, fatty acids, and these wonderfully rich, complex nutritional substances that feed plants. And that's how soil works, basically. And soil is the most amazing life-giving substance, and it's what makes the earth have all of this wonderful life on it.
I'm with you. I'm also reading some of the comments. There's so many, and there's so many questions. It's because, this is a complicated process. People do want to understand it.
It's really cool stuff, isn't it? I think it's so fascinating. I'm blown away by it. I still get blown away by it every time I read about it. So why don't we take some questions?
Well, what about this? Someone mentioned D and K2, and those are also both fat-soluble nutrients. Notice everything that we've talked about so far has been fat-soluble. It's in the fat category of nutrients, both vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, the fat-soluble nutrients are trickier than the water-soluble nutrients and essential nutrients. The water-soluble essential nutrients are largely the B complex, which is made up of a bunch of individual vitamins, B vitamins, and vitamin C. Those are very easy for the body to handle. In fact, they're so easy for the body to handle that they get excreted readily. And so you got to keep a steady influx of vitamin C and the B complex throughout the day.
Just like water, the water-soluble nutrients are constantly running through you and
they're
need to be replenished.
constantly running through you, exactly. They're the ones that give you a spark, the water-soluble nutrients. The fat-soluble nutrients, those are for more sustained chemistry, for stress management chemistry, for long-term changes. Those are the fatty ones stick. It's like peanut butter and jelly. If you take peanut butter and jelly and put it on a knife, right, and you stick it under a faucet, under a spigot, and you run water, what's going to rinse off?
The jelly's going to run
jelly, and the peanut butter is going to stick, right? Fatty substances stick. They stick to food, which means they're harder for the body to extract, and they stick to the body, which means they're stored. The body, you don't run into deficiencies as readily, but they're harder to get from food. Water-soluble nutrients, they're much easier to get into the system, but you're more likely to become deficient in them, especially if you're drinking a lot of water. Everybody's drinking water bottles these days. The more water you're drinking, the more likely you're going to be to excrete your water-soluble nutrients, which are the vitamin C, the B complex, and then also electrolytes, which is why it's important to constantly be using your Beyond Tangy Tangerine, using vegetable juices and vegetables, making sure you're constantly putting those water-soluble nutrients into your system. The fatty nutrients, you only need to do them once a day or so, but your liver has to be working correctly, your gallbladder has to be working correctly, your intestine and your pancreas have to be functioning correctly. There's a lot of digestive chemistry that goes into processing your fatty nutrients. So many people, if they're not supplementing, are going to be deficient in fatty nutrients, especially vitamin A and vitamin D, which are so important that they're more than vitamins, they're hormones, which means a vitamin is an assistant. A hormone is an activator. A vitamin helps. A hormone makes it happen. That makes vitamin A and D, which are hormones technically, not vitamins, way more significant than any other vitamin. And it makes vitamin A and D deficiency super important and super relevant when it comes to when it comes to overall health, especially when it comes to skin health. So, I say supplement. That's the best way to do it. Just take some supplements, make sure you're eating correctly, but supplements are like a guarantee. They're like an insurance policy to make sure you're getting these nutrients.
So we're recommending the 90 essential nutrients, but these ones that we're talking about specifically are the ones that you want to boost if you're having any problem. I want to jump in here too. They're saying, so we don't want to drink too much water. Is that what you're saying? No, it means the more water you drink, the more water-soluble nutrients you need.
That's a very interesting thing. Water gives the body the right environment for the chemistry to work. The chemistry, specifically the enzymes in the body, enzymes are what really do the work in the body. All the chemistry in the body is performed by enzymes. Enzymes are the workhorse of the body. And without enzymes, there's no life. And that's when you die because your enzymes aren't working. That's what enzymes are, the life force. They carry the life force. They're the chemical version of chi in the body. And the chi, the enzymes in the body, are designed to work in a milieu of water. When you're dehydrated, the enzymes don't work as effectively. And you don't have the same biochemistry. You don't have the same energy. You don't produce the same substances because the enzymes are doing all of that. So water is critical for the enzymes. But it's interesting because when it comes to the skin, water is not what keeps the skin moist. People say, oh, you have dry skin, drink water. It's not a function of water, because the water in the skin is not the same as the water in a cup. The water in the body, in fact, is not the same as the water in a cup. The water in the body, and particularly in the skin, is magic water. And when I say magic water, I mean it's something called structured water. Have you heard of this term? Have we talked about this before? Structured water?
I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but we talk quite a lot about structured water.
The water in the body is organized, and it's organized in a way that allows it to conduct electrical energy rapidly. It's, in fact, the water in the body, which is structured by the connective tissue, acts like a superconducting information transferring system that allows information to go from one point to another instantaneously. And the water in the skin is structured by the connective tissue. When you're dehydrated, when your skin is dry, it's not a function of water as much as it's a function of connective tissue and a function of fats, of sebum, and of fats that are produced by the skin cells. There's two kinds of fats in the skin. There's the fats that are produced by sebum or sebaceous glands, and there's the fats that are produced by skin cells. You have two kinds of fats. The fats that are produced by the skin cells trap the water from the top down, and the connective tissue traps the water from the bottom up. And that's how the skin is supposed to stay nice and hydrated, is by a function of the fats and a function of the connective tissue. When the connective tissue is not strong and healthy, you don't hold on to the water. You don't structure the water as effectively. And this is why as we age and our connective tissue deteriorates, our skin becomes dry. So if you have dry skin, it's not just drinking water. You got to build the connective tissue, and you got to make sure that you're producing enough of fats. And that comes from the diet and comes from nutrition. So the combination of fats and connective tissue is how the skin stays soft and hydrated. It's not enough just to drink water. It's the water plus the fats and plus the connective tissue. Connective tissue deterioration is the very essence of aging. Whether you're talking about the skin, whether you're talking about the bones, whether you're talking about the internal organs, whether you're talking about the blood vessels, whether you're talking about the heart, the connective tissue is our core. And when the connective tissue breaks down, we break down. And all of the things we hate about aging, whether we're talking about wrinkles, or whether we're talking about arthritis, or whether we're talking about osteoporosis, or whether we're talking about cancer, or whether we're talking about heart disease, are all the manifestation of broken down, deteriorating connective tissue. If you want to do one thing for the health of your body, build your connective tissue. And that means bone broth, and that means protein, and that means collagen peptides, and that means vitamin C. In fact, check this out. You're going to love this. What's the disease caused or marked by vitamin C deficiency, caused by vitamin C deficiency? What's
Scurvy.
That? Correct. Scurvy is when your connective tissue breaks down. And the signs of scurvy are wrinkles, thinning
I love
skin.
how you call vitamin C basically C for connective tissue.
It's C for connective tissue, correct. If vitamin C and vitamin C is ascorbic acid. Ascorbic means without scurvy. It cures scurvy. Ascorbic acid means it cures scurvy. Scurvy, the signs of scurvy are thinning skin, wrinkles, osteoporosis, ruptures and hernias, vascular problems, hemorrhages. All of the signs about aging, all of the signs of aging are scurvy. Scurvy and aging have the same symptoms. Aging is like subclinical scurvy. So what does that tell you about vitamin C? It is the key to
excessively
anti-aging,
important.
and it's completely non-toxic. And the amount of vitamin C that they tell you is all you need, the recommended daily allowance, that's not enough to build connective tissue. That's enough to keep you from having scurvy. But it's not enough to slow down aging. It's not enough to protect your heart. It's not enough to protect your blood vessels and build bones. And when it comes to building bones, everybody's talking about calcium. Vitamin C is way more important than calcium when it comes to building bones and when it comes to building connective tissue. In fact, just taking calcium can be counterproductive. If your body's not handling the calcium, calcification, hardening of the body is one of the ways we age. Calcification of the brain, calcification of the heart. So this thing, you know, I don't know if it used to be in the 90s and in the early 2000s, even the 1980s, everybody was obsessed with calcium. If you're interested in building connective tissue and anti-aging, and building bones, make sure you're using your vitamin C. And remember, vitamin C is water soluble, so you're urinating it out. So if you're not taking it throughout the day and taking, this is why one of the reasons why I love Beyond Tangy Tangerine so much is you're getting vitamin C throughout the day.
It's got a ton of it in it, yeah.
There's a lot of vitamin C in there, and you're getting it throughout the day. And by the way, there's some people out there that are saying vitamin C is not really a vitamin. I've heard this. Have you heard some alternative practitioners saying, oh, it's not, ascorbic acid is synthetic and it's not really a vitamin. Baloney.
To me, it's pedantic.
Yes, baloney. Now, it's true that there are factors in plants that help vitamin C work. Polyphenols, bioflavonoids, these substances that are found in plants that are associated with vitamin C, like in rose hips and such. Those are very important. I'm not diminishing those. Nonetheless, ascorbic acid is powerful, powerful medicine just by itself. It's ascorbic acid. It cures scurvy. So just by itself, it's powerful medicine. Food is always the best way to get your nutrition. That's without a doubt, because there's cofactors in foods that we don't consider to be essential.
It's just not always possible to get them all.
Exactly.
Well, it's never possible to get all 90 essential nutrients in food without other things going on.
Yes, because all those minerals that we talked, or those elements we talked about, the polyelectrolytes, they are required for the plant to make proteins and for the plant to make the polyphenols and the bioflavonoids and the carotenes and the phytonutrients. The plant makes those from the elements. The elements are the foundation. That's what the plant makes all of its nutrition from. And if the elements aren't in the soil, the plants aren't going to be able to make all of the wonderful phytonutrients and the proteins and all the things that a plant is supposed to make. And we know that our soils don't have those things. In fact, a smart farmer or smart gardener will actually sprinkle fulvics and humics into the soil so that the plants will be healthier.
And that's what they did in the wild, in the natural communities anyways. They're burning the wood and the moss
ash,
and all this stuff, and the resulting ash goes into the garden, it goes into the foods.
Exactly.
They're fortifying the soils even
exactly more. Or bones, they'll use crushed up bones, same thing.
Yep. In big compost heaps too. A lot of people don't realize like what a compost heap is in a natural community. It could be bigger than the house. Basically, these are tons and tons of food scraps and ashes and bones and all kinds of things going in and then going back into the soil.
That's what we're supposed to be doing. We don't do that anymore. We use fertilizers. We use chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides, and that's why plants today have fractions of the protein and fractions of the vitamins and fractions of the phytonutrients that they had even 15, 20 years ago, let alone
fractions of the taste too.
Fractions of the taste, exactly, that they had 15 or 20 years ago. You ever eat a homemade or a tomato from a garden? You
can just eat it and enjoy it. Like an apple, like, whoa, this is juicy.
Exactly.
So for all of the things that people need to do to have healthy skin, obviously we need to take the 90 essential nutrients. If that alone is not enough,
that's the baseline.
Zinc is probably going to be the one that you want to throw right in there and boost.
It's hard to say the most important, but if I had to, I'd say vitamin A and zinc, and then essential fatty acids. When you take essential fatty acids out of the diet of an animal, it instantly gets dermatitis. It will get
instantly,
almost instantly. Sensitive skin, dermatitis, rashes, eczema. As soon as you take EFAs out of the diet. In fact, that's the classic sign of essential fatty acid deficiency is dermatitis. It's the classic sign. So
we need quite a lot of these, yeah?
Anybody who's dealing with rashes, dermatitis, sensitive skin, almost guaranteed they're going to have an EFA deficiency. Now, here's the thing about EFAs. You can't really get them from foods. They're very difficult. You have to eat a lot of fish. You have to eat a lot of grains. You got
particularly omega-3, yeah.
Omega-3s, yeah, but even omega-6s. You have to eat grains. The main source of omega-6s is seeds and grains. You have to eat a lot of them to get your omega-6s. And you have to make sure that your gallbladder is working, your pancreas is working, all of the fatty machineries, fat digestion machinery is working. So it's really tricky to get enough EFAs unless you're supplementing. If you have any kind of skin issue that involves rashes, sensitivity, or dry skin, get yourself on essential fatty acid supplements, as well as vitamin A and as well as zinc. Those are probably the most important. I would also throw in silica, which is a really, really underappreciated mineral element for the skin. Silica,
what form do you recommend silica?
Liquid gel. It's the best form. I buy powder. I buy pharmacy powder, and I make my own liquid gel. But you've got to find liquid silica gel. It's really hard to find, which is very ironic, considering silica is the most abundant element on planet Earth. The most abundant mineral element on planet Earth is silica, and aluminum. I think aluminum might be, I think silica is actually the number one, the most abundant element. Silica is basically sand. That's a form of silica. That's silicon oxide. So silica is extremely important, and it's ironic that it's hard to find because it's so abundant, but it is hard to find. Liquid silica gel is the best. Silica is a precipitating agent. It helps turn on the production of connective tissue. So silica is extremely, extremely important stuff. So between silica, zinc, vitamin A, and essential fatty acids, those are probably the most important. But, you know, I hate to isolate things. I hate to do it that way because nutrients are like a system. They're like a team. You need them all. But if you had to pick some, those would be the four most important, I would say. I don't want to underestimate, you know, or underappreciate magnesium or calcium.
It's hard to
selenium.
pick out favorites when it comes to the nutrients, for sure.
Selenium is also interesting. That's also very important for people who have dandruff or people who have acne. Selenium is anti-acne, anti-dandruff, very important for the immune system. So
also part of the fat-soluble group.
It's also part of the fatty minerals. That's right. Zinc and selenium are both handled by bile. They're unique in the world of minerals because they're handled by the fatty system of the body. If you have any issues with fat absorption, fat metabolism, fat processing, you had your gallbladder taken out, fatty liver disease, any of those things, you might have an issue with with absorbing fatty nutrients.
Ben, judging on the comments, I think I'm going to need to invite you back on here because it seems like people are really excited and they've got a lot of questions. And truthfully, every time you and I talk, suddenly I've got all these new things to think about. And I've been doing this for 6 years, largely because of you. And there's still new things coming up all the time.
Awesome.
So,
well, you're doing great work. Great work.
People
Ryan.
also said that you should write a book, and this is another thing I've been saying for 6 years. You should get a book out. Truthfully, I'm still willing to help with it.
I know your book's amazing. Your book's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you for doing that. That's great. I love that you motivated to do that. You are an impressive human being, Ryan Aleckszander. I knew at the moment I met you. You are an impressive human being. Right on.
Well, I genuinely don't think I would be here without you. Dr. Wallach, obviously, he is our guru. He is the general of this army. And he's the first book I was handed was Dr. Wallach. But for people who didn't know, I say it all the time. It wasn't until I saw Ben Fuchs that I really kind of went, wow. You know, not only to the kind of understanding how this all worked together, but like, wow, I also have to communicate this forward sort of in the vein of Ben Fuchs because you're really, really awesome at
thank you. I appreciate that. I wouldn't be here. Dr. Wallach is the man. I can't carry his jockstrap if he has a jockstrap. I can't carry it. So I don't want to ever put myself in the same on the same level as Dr. Wallach.
You are to me.
I appreciate that.
None of us did the initial research like Dr. Wallach, but in terms of communicating it and pushing it forward and helping this whole movement gain momentum, you're integral to it. I wouldn't.
Thank you.
Don't think anything else.
All right.
Ben, I know you've got to go.
Thank you.
This has been wonderful. There's been so many questions generated. All I can say is anybody.
I don't know if I'll ever see the questions. So if there's anything that's really important, you should somehow communicate with me. Or maybe we'll just do something YouTube or something where we'll just answer questions.
I was actually going to suggest that we should just do one that's just pure questions.
Just me.
We're going to save this.
We'll do just me and you, and then we'll take all the questions that are here, and then we'll just post it.
That's a great idea because that way if we did a Q&A there would just be more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's do it. We'll do a YouTube or Skype or something, and we can record it, and we'll just answer questions.
Perfect. We will save this. It'll be on our account. We'll also put it on YouTube probably within a few days. And for now, I know you got to go, Ben. I appreciate your time so much. I know the audience here appreciates it as well, and I have to invite you back on.
Let me just tell you, I do a radio program called The Bright Side every day, and then I also have my Truth Skin Health products. You can find it truthtreatments.com, and we have 1,800 going on 1,900, I believe, 4- and 5-star reviews at Truth Reviewed with a D, truthreviewed.com, truthtreatments.com for our products. And then you can also, I have a bunch of videos. If you just Google Pharmacist Ben and any topic, you'll get a whole bunch of videos.
And Ben Fuchs' archives is excessively valuable. I wanted to tell you a story how your archives saved somebody's appendix recently. But I don't think we have time for that. Right. I want you to say, how can people listen to your radio show if they are just they're not in America and they're not on the radio?
Because we got censored so many times on YouTube because we're talking about the V word. You know, the V word, I don't want to go there, but we've been talking about it. So we got censored so many times, we moved to Rumble. We're on, you get the radio program on Rumble. But if you just Google, the Bright Side, you'll get a whole bunch of stuff.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you so much, Ben. What you're doing. And we'll see you soon, actually, in Denver, by the way.
Oh, I'll look forward to that. Thanks, Ryan.
Cool. Take care, man.
Bye.
And definitely check out my newest book, Fake Diseases. It covers all of the major topics that come up, like birth defects, blood sugar problems, bone and joint problems, cancer, autoimmune problems, and more. And it's on Amazon for just $9.99. And the audiobook read-along version is free here on YouTube, and the link for that is in the description of this video. And I've also published a book in response to some of Dr. Wallach's criticisms, including the major articles that have been written against him on the internet. So if you are a Dr. Wallach fan or a longevity distributor, I definitely recommend having this book in your toolkit. And of course, make sure to check out our food page, Notice Foods, that's on YouTube, and at Notice Foods on Instagram. We have a lot of content up there teaching you how to cook without the bad foods that Dr. Wallach describes, and Dr. Glidden's 12 bad foods, all of that, all of the rules that you need to know. And we have experienced chefs and bakers who will answer the questions in those inboxes. And if you'd like to talk to us directly, you can call us. Actually, you can call Judy. She's downriver Detroit. You can call from anywhere in the US, Canada, Mexico, UK, Australia, New Zealand, any other country. You want to email us or send us a DM on whatever app that you want to contact us on. Instagram is super convenient for us. And that's for any sales or product information in those countries, or any distributor information.